Welcome back everybody to section 5. We're going to talk about Earth systems. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Earth is a very, very big place. It presents some very, very complicated problems. So from a problem-solving perspective, if you have a problem that's too complicated to solve, what do? You break it down into simpler problems. Right? For the Earth, we break it down into systems: air, water, land, life, that make up the entire Earth. And then study these individually because, they might be complicated still, but they're not nearly as complicated as the entire thing interacting with each other. We break them into these systems. These are these portions of the universe, or the Earth, which we can isolate for the purpose of observing some sort of meaningful change in the system. And to look briefly at an example here, if somebody asked you to analyze everything going on in the image, what would you start to do? Well, you would say, okay, there's this landmass of trees up here. We'll kind of put that off as one system here. We've got the river, especially the mouth of the lake here. Kind of put that off as another system, river system here. We would have this larger ecosystem here, which we could break off, or we could even break it into smaller components, which are the fish. Point being, breaking things into a system is something that most of us sort of do intuitively. It's a process that we're familiar with, but it's important to put this into concrete terms so that we can talk to each other about it. Now, I gave you the informal names for these before, but we talk about 4 major spheres for Earth. 4 or 5, depending on who you ask. First is Geosphere. Geo is rock. This is everything on Earth that is solid rock. We have the Biosphere, all the life, living organisms. Atmosphere with all the gases, and the Hydrosphere. And I can tell the picture on the left also has this section on the Cryosphere. For the purposes of our class, we're going to include this with the Hydrosphere. 2 are the same, including all water, ice, underground, above ground, anywhere that you have water or water vapor. Now, within the larger framework of the systems, we have these things called cycles, right? Something like the water cycle, you're all familiar, rock cycle, you're all familiar, a little bit more detail, and things like the tectonic cycle, which maybe you're not as familiar with. Still smaller, though, than the entire system that is the geosphere. We'll look here at a few cycles. Now, I do not expect you guys to be familiar with everything on this diagram yet. Keep in mind, though, by the time we get to the end of the course, you would be able to point to any part of this diagram and be able to explain to somebody what is going on, what it means, how it connects to the things around it. We have our tectonic cycle here, our sort of big picture cycle. It's actually what we're going to cover first in the course. Then we will cover the rock cycle somewhere in the middle of the course, slowly sort of zooming in more and more detail, more and more specific. And actually, for the very end of the course, the last sort of block there, we start talking about the hydrologic cycle, maybe in a little bit more detail than you've seen in the past. For the final section, we talk about what makes our planet unique. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you then.